many of you have heard of a king named Ahab? Not the guy from the Moby Dick story, but King Ahab. Anybody heard of King Ahab before? Okay, he was by far the worst king of Israel, the worst king Israel ever had. In fact, the way that God describes him is that he did even more evil than any of the kings before him ever. His wife was just about as he was. Just as rotten, just as nasty. So his wife's name was this lady named Jezebel, and she got to be very well known in her reputation for being evil as well. Her dad was the priest of a false religion. They worshipped a supposed god named Baal. You might have seen this written B-A-apostrophe-A-L or B-A-A-L. Some people say Baal, some people say Baal, some people say Baal. It doesn't really matter, as long as we all know who we're talking about, right? But this was the lowercase g god, the supposed god of storms. They believed that he had the power to control the mighty wind and the raging lightning and the torrential rainfalls. I've heard a little bit of news lately about some storms that are wreaking havoc since we had a change in temperature here recently, and they would have attributed that to who they believed to be God. So that was her dad. He was the priest of that particular religion, and so she worshipped that false god as well. And it really wasn't all that much time later until Ahab builds a temple, because you know, us guys, when we like our ladies, we want to give them the good things, we want to show them that we honor them, and he liked her an awful lot, and so he builds a temple for her false god. And the Lord says that he did more to provoke the anger of the Lord, the God of Israel, than any other king of Israel before him. I would give him a 1-star review. In fact, I would give him a 0-star review if I could. I just don't know that the stars work that way. And really, unfortunately, the nation followed Ahab's example. He was their king. He was the one up front. He was the one guiding and leading the way. And so they just started worshiping this false god as well. Now, keep in mind, this is the nation of Israel. Why had God created the nation of Israel? He gathered this people together, gave them a place to live, and established them as a nation for the purpose of sharing God's blessing with everybody in the whole world. He wanted that nation to exist so that people everywhere, not just the Jews, but people everywhere would be able to experience God's blessing. But in fact, now they were doing quite the opposite of that. They were worshiping a false god, and not only were they not following the one true God themselves, but they were leading other people to do the same. So not fulfilling their purpose, not spreading God's blessing, really making a mess out of their own lives. And so like God has done a number of times, he sends someone to address the problem, this issue here. He chooses this guy named Elijah. Now, Elijah became known as one of the most famous prophets in our Old Testament. We learn a little bit about Elijah's life story as we read through Scripture. In fact, we're going to look at the beginning of his life story in chapter 17. So look there with me, 1 Kings 17, and let's find out what happens here right at the start of when Elijah enters the scene. It says, "Now Elijah, who was from Tishbe in Gilead, told King Ahab, 'As surely as the Lord, the God of Israel lives, the God I serve, there will be no dew or rain during the next few years until I give the word.'" Can you imagine that? Can you imagine what that would be like? I mean, we like the sunny weather. We like it when the clouds part and we get to see the blue skies and it's warm and nice, and we kind of had a little bit of tease of that here recently. But if there's no rain ever, that ends up becoming a problem. And this was a direct challenge to King Ahab's supposed god. Remember, the false god that Ahab worshipped was the god of storms. And now Elijah is announcing on behalf of God, because God sent him to say, hey, you're not going to have any more rain. Your false god's not the one who's in charge of storms. I am, okay? And so, as you can imagine, King Ahab was not happy about this news. He was not happy about someone who would talk to him that way, someone who would disrespect him like that, someone who wouldn't just cave and start worshiping the God that Ahab worshipped. And his anger, his frustration became even worse as the prophecy came true. First, he heard the announcement, okay, well, yeah, we'll see. You say it's not going to rain, whatever, but then it didn't, and then it didn't again, and then it didn't again, and days turned into weeks, turned into months, turned into years with absolutely no rain. And when there wasn't rain, then there wasn't any crops. And when there wasn't any crops, there wasn't any food, and when there wasn't any crops and food, there wasn't any livestock, and it wouldn't be very long until there's no life. You see, rain, it ends up being like really, really important. It kind of annoys us when we're trying to have some fun outside, picnic or go for a walk or whatever the case may be, but we need to have it every once in a while. And in this case, then the Lord had said, that's not going to happen anymore because your false God is not a real God. I'm putting words in his mouth, kind of paraphrasing at this point. No more rain for the next several years. Because King Ahab was so upset with Elijah and this announcement that Elijah had made, you can picture it with me. How does he feel? What is he going to do to Elijah? The Lord says to Elijah, you got to get out of here. I mean, you need to run. You actually need to play a little bit of time of hide and seek down by this brook. And he sent him to a very specific brook. And he said, I want you to stay there. And when you're there, then I'm going to provide for you your food. I'm going to provide for you your water. I'll make sure that you have what you need when you're at this brook. And as you can imagine, that worked for a time. Because here he is getting his food and getting his water until it doesn't rain anymore. What happens to a brook made of water when there's no rain, made of water for years? Well, as you can imagine, as the prophecy came true in verse 7, it says, after a while, the brook where he was hiding dried up, for there was no rainfall anywhere in the land. It got me thinking, though, because, that really stinks, right? Hadn't he done what God asked him to do? God sent him to go confront the king. God sent him to go make this bad news announcement. God sent him to say, hey, this is what's going to happen. And God said, I'm going to provide for you your food and your drink. But yet now he can't be at home. He's on the run. He was the bearer of bad news. He had brought this challenge to his king and to his nation as he's running for his life. And now his water supply, his very source of life, had dried up. And it was gone, while Elijah was doing the thing that he was supposed to be doing. So he had done exactly as God had asked for him to do, but things were still really rough. So the intensity intensifies as we turn to the next chapter, chapter 18. Look there with me, just flip a little bit. Swipe if you need to, 1 Kings 18. It tells us that the drought lasted for 3 años, 3 years, no rain, and no life, on the verge of no life here. It was at this point, 3 years later, that God sent Elijah to announce a new weather forecast. That might be seen as good news, that might not, just depending on kind of how you feel about it. But the Lord lets Elijah know, I want you to go and tell King Ahab, okay, it's time for it to rain. And it was like God had proven his point, right? It could have been a coincidence that it didn't rain for a while. Could have been a coincidence that it didn't rain for a long time. I'm sure during that time that they would have been praying and crying out to their false god, hoping that their false god would send them some rain, but the false god didn't because the false god doesn't exist. And now 3 years later, they were announcing, now it's time. You never should have worshipped that false god. So Ahab had been looking for Elijah this whole time. In fact, because he hated him so very much, Ahab was violently searching for Elijah, hoping to do all kinds of nasty things to him if he could catch him, maybe even kill him. But yet here Elijah just kind of comes waltzing back in, almost as if nothing had happened, and he just shows up here before the king. And when Ahab saw him, he exclaimed, so is it really you troublemaker of Israel? Can you imagine just walking up to the very king that you had challenged? You had challenged him, you had challenged his God. 3 years later, everything is devastating, and he just walks in, and the king's like, so you're the troublemaker. You're the one who made this whole mess. But really? Was Elijah the troublemaker? Was he the one who was leading people to worship a false god? Or was that King Ahab and his wife, Jezebel? Elijah wasn't about to put up with Ahab's insults. I love this next part, actually. He makes this challenge to Ahab, kind of throws it right back in his face. So he gets called the name, hey, troublemaker, and then he just throws it right back at him. He's like, hey, so here's what's going to happen. You are going to get together your 900 prophets, and then you're going to come and you're going to meet with me at Mount Carmel. So gather together your prophets, we're heading out there. Now, I want you to read this for yourself. If you know what happens next, then you already understand and remember how exciting that next part is, but I'm not going to talk about that. I'm going to skip that. I'm going to send it home with you and let you read 1 Kings 18 on your own time. And trust me, you do not want to miss that. Make sure to read that before you go to bed tonight. But I'll just tell you, by the end of the day, Ahab is humiliated. All the false prophets are dead. The Lord is proven to be the one true God. And in that point, Jezebel is plotting her revenge against Elijah. So it was a pretty exciting day. I don't want you to miss out on it. But I don't want to get distracted by that, so we'll jump over that part. Let you read chapter 18 on your own. Jezebel had already ordered the massacre of all of the Lord's prophets. She wanted to make sure that if there was anybody who was following the Lord, if there's anyone who was sharing messages from God to people, that they were dead. This was her order as queen. And all of the prophets would have included Elijah, right? He was one of the Lord's prophets. But yet somehow he kept eluding her. And now she knew where he was, because he had just come right back in. And now that she had located him, she gives him 24 hours to live. She issues this death announcement here, and she's going to unalive him and make sure that by this time tomorrow, you're gone. You're dead. Chapter 19, verse 3, look there with me. Elijah was afraid. Yeah, I would be too, because these are powerful people who can actually fulfill their death threats. Elijah was afraid, and he fled for his life. He went to this place called Beersheba, a town in Judah, and he left his servant there, and then he went on alone into the wilderness, traveling all day. Let it sink in, because I know at this point it's words on a page, it's an idea in your head, but think about the reality of this. He's running. He's alone. He's facing not just a tough situation, but death threats. It was at this point when he just collapses under a tree and gives up. He says, I've had enough, Lord. Can you picture him laying there just like totally in despair, overwhelmed? And he says, like, I might as well just die. I can't keep doing this. He's exhausted and he feels hopeless. Have you ever felt that way? I mean, I don't know, maybe that extreme, maybe not, but this is nasty. A really horrible description of a person who had been working hard and trying to do the right thing, but yet now he's in a real mess. And the Bible tells us that he lay down and he slept under that tree. I think I probably would have needed to sleep too. Next it says that the Lord sent an angel, and the angel comes and he gives him some freshly baked bread. That's a nice way to wake up, I think. Like, do I smell breakfast? What's that? Hey. And so he wakes up, he eats some of this bread, he has a little bit of a drink. It says he ate and he drank, and then he lay down again. So you can see the lines here on the screen, verses 5 and 6, this description of how he was provided for. And then, but he's not quite ready to go. He needs to have nap number 2. So after his second time of rest, then he's at this point regained his strength, enough strength for him to travel, because he's going to go and he's going to meet with God on this mountain. And when he goes to meet with God on a mountain, it's a very specific mountain where he is sent. It's a famous mountain, a very well-known mountain called Mount Sinai. Have you heard of that one before? Mount Sinai, Sinai. So he gets there to the mountain, but before he's going to meet with God, keeping in mind what has taken place so far, gets to this place where he's going to meet with God, but first he inflates his air mattress, and then he takes another overnight nap in the cave because, hey, I've been traveling, I've been facing it rough. You know how stress makes you exhausted? Like, even if you're not doing something physical, he's just worn. The guy's just worn out. So he spends the night in the cave, and partway through verse 9, the Lord said to him, chapter 19, partway through verse 9, the Lord said to him, "What are you doing here, Elijah?" Elijah replied, "I have zealously served Lord God Almighty." It's like he was saying, I've been working really hard. I've been doing the right things. I've been facing tough situations. I've been having those difficult conversations that you asked me to have. I take responsibility in my work. I've been taking care of my family and trying to protect my home. I love my God and I love my nation. But partway through verse 10, but the people of Israel, he said, the people of Israel have broken their covenant with you, torn down your altars, they killed every one of your prophets. It's like I'm surrounded by people who, it's not just that they don't care, they're actually opposed to me and to my God. They're irresponsible, and they're disrespectful, and they're disobedient. Their lives are a mess. And when you sent me to confront them about it, it only got worse. And then he said near the end of verse 10, I'm the only one left. And now they're trying to kill me too. On the run, all alone, threatened with death, overwhelmed and exhausted, in despair and feeling hopeless. I want you to imagine at this point, there at Mount Sinai, the very same location where God had given the 10 Commandments to Moses earlier, same location. Imagine if God had said to Elijah, Eli, there's this rule, this command. I told you, you have 6 days each week for your ordinary work, but the 7th day is a Sabbath day of rest dedicated to me. I told you, that's my rule, that's my command. Can you imagine if God had said that to Elijah in this moment? I mean, there really is a rule. There really is a command from God where he tells us you need to rest. You have to. He called it a Sabbath. And in fact, when God gave this rule, he gave it more than once. It was important enough for him to repeat, to make sure that people heard it so that they would do what he was asking them to do. He said, keep the Sabbath day holy. Don't pursue your own interests on that day, but enjoy the Sabbath and speak of it with delight as the Lord's holy day. Honor the Sabbath in everything you do on that day. And don't follow your own desires or talk idly, and then the Lord will be your delight. But why? Why did God give a rule? Why did he give a command about rest? In fact, why did he say that this is something that we should enjoy? What are you talking about? How many of you have ever assembled together some furniture from Solder or IKEA or something similar to that? So many of us have. Putting together something like that can be a little bit of work sometimes. They design it to be easy so that even dummies like me can do it, but sometimes it gets complicated and it can be a little bit of work. There is not a farmer who exists who doesn't already understand hard work. People who farm know hard work. And they're not alone either, are they? Yeah, we've got parents of young children who are just worn thin. I was having a conversation with someone recently who's got little ones, and they were just talking about how they have nothing left. They're all spent. Anybody who is an hourly wage worker knows what it's like to work hard, especially people who work in a factory. Oh man, if you work in a factory, you better brace yourself. You better get some decent shoes and go in. I see some of you nodding your heads like, yeah, I know what that kind of hard work feels like. Small business owners, they're not bored. They're not twiddling their thumbs. They know what it is to work hard. They know what it is to do the right thing. They know what it is to provide for their families, and they know what it feels like to become exhausted and worn, and at the end of a long day, knowing I got to get up again tomorrow morning and do it all again. And the Lord knows what hard work feels like too. I don't want to belittle in any way your hard work. I'm just trying to help you remember He knows what that's like because He works hard too. When He created the universe and everything in it, which I would say is harder work than any hard work we've ever done. Is that fair? I mean, I couldn't do that. So when He did that at the end of His work week, He took a day. He set aside a day so that He could rest. He created for 6 days, and then I like to say that on the seventh day, He created rest. That's how important it was. He set it apart from all the other days and said, this one is different. This day is holy. It's sacred. It's going to be altogether apart from the rest of the days where we're working really hard. And when God did that at the end of His work week, He didn't do it because He was tired. He doesn't get tired like you and I do. He did it to set a pattern for you and for me, for everybody, to show us that it was that important for us that He was going to take the time to do it too. Here's the one thing I want to teach you today. One thing I want you to remember. Put it in your noggin, memorize it, take it home with you. Remember it forever, tell it to your grandkids one day. One thing I want to teach you today. Rest is a gift from God. Rest is a gift from God. It's a provision for us, not a burden like some people look at it. Jesus said that it was made for us, not to enslave us, it was made to serve us. That when we work hard, and we do, sometimes we got to work really hard, and then when we rest the way that God commands for us to, that's when we are renewed. That's when we are refreshed and restored. One of the most famous psalms ever, a psalm that I would guess most people, even people who aren't in churchy settings, most people have heard some of the content of Psalm 23. They might not know where it's located, they might not know where to find it in the Bible, but they recognize words from this famous Psalm 23. God makes us lie down in green pastures. Remember, He's kind of like comparing us to sheep. The Lord is my shepherd. He makes us to lie down in green pastures. It says He restores our souls. We really like the texts in the Bible that are about God giving us strength, don't we? I like those. You know, when God comes along and He's going to strengthen us, He's going to make us have the power to overcome temptation. He's going to make us have the power to be free and to live lives of holiness. He's going to make us into new people. He's going to come and He's going to strengthen us. We like these lines that say things like, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. I like that. We like these lines about God giving us strength. Have you ever noticed that you feel stronger after you rest? I've noticed it. That's why we call our people to remember that all time is God's. And the way that we use time impacts others. So together we commit to using time in ways that proclaim God's love to the world, build each other up, and craft healthy communities of grace. In this way, our leisure time and our active time, our sleep time and our work time, our worship time and our whole time is offered to God in stewardship. If we hope to be restored, if we hope to find the kind of rest that actually refreshes us inside, that relieves our weary burdens, then we need to rest the way that God designed and commanded for us to rest. We need to rest the amount that God designed for us to rest. We need to rest at the frequency that God commanded for us to rest. And when God established this weekly rhythm of rest, it had way more in it than simply ceasing from work Way more in it than hitting pause on the list of responsibilities here. Our weekend can mean so much more. You've had weekends before that were refreshing. You've had weekends before where, well, I mean, technically it was a weekend, but it wasn't refreshing at all. I hate those kind of weekends. Oh. It can help us to refocus on God. That's a whole lot more than just, well, I didn't work on that day. It can help us to align our hearts with His purposes. Well, I didn't clock in on that day. No. It can help us to pause with God. That's an altogether different scenario than just not working on that day. Allowing Him to restore us. This is how God has designed time for you and for me. His design for us is to spend our time in this way. Did you know that God uses two very different words for time? I want you to catch this. Think about this for a moment. When God talks about time, He actually uses two different words. We say time, okay, it's time, whatever. When He says time, He means two different things depending on which word He talks about it. It ends up getting translated as time in our Bibles most of the time. Sorry about that. But the chronos, the one that you see on the screen here, chronos is sequential time. Think of it like on a clock or on a calendar. So chronos is time where it would lead us to say, what time is it? Or what's today's date? That's one form of time. The other type of a word that he uses for time is kairos. It's a chosen or purposeful moment, an appointed time, like a moment of opportunity. Kairos. God instructs us to make the most of every kairos because the days are evil. That's Ephesians 5:16. Make the most of every opportunity, every potential, every appointed time that's chosen by God, of every purposeful moment. Make the most out of that. God doesn't see time as mere minutes, hours, days, weeks, months, years. When He looks at it, He sees purpose. He sees opportunity in you, in the way that you spend your time. And the way that we use time is evidence. It's evidence for who we trust to provide for our lives. Think about this. If we scurry about, whether it's scurrying about for work or scurrying about for responsibilities or scurrying about for school assignments, whatever, but we scurry about and we're worrying about these things, it's evidence that we are trusting in ourselves because I have to do the work. I have to fix the thing. I have to make sure that this is taken care of. You know what we call that? When we scurry about worrying and working like this, we call it workaholism. I trust me because I'm the one who has to get it done. That's evidence, if that's how I'm living my life, of who I trust to be my provider. But if we use our time for God's purposes, including our hard work and including times of rest, the way that God has designed for us, then that rest that we take, that rest that we have, declares our trust in someone other than ourselves. It declares that we trust in God to be our provider. I mean, we still have to do the work, right? If there's work that needs to get done, it needs to get done. So don't take this as an excuse to slack on your responsibilities. You still got to do the work. And you still got to rest. It's both together. This is what enables us to say, I can rest now because God is my provider. I got to do the work, and I got to rest. And I can because God is my provider. The way that we use our time reveals our priorities. How many of you have heard someone say, or maybe even said yourselves, I don't have time for that. There's one person that's willing to admit it. Come on. Yeah, all right, there it is. I don't have time for it. Fill in the blank. I don't have enough time for fill in the blank. It's a little bit misleading, I would say, though. That might be kind of threatening or offensive to you. But I don't entirely believe the I don't have time for it line. You know why? We all get the same amount of time. All of us have 60 minutes in an hour. All of us have 24 hours in a day. All of us have the same amount of time, the same amount of chronos, okay? But we don't always use it for the best kairos, the best purpose, the best opportunity. I got to do this thing. Yeah, sometimes you do need to. And this is on my schedule, and so I can't. Yeah, I know you can't be in two places at the same time. But when we do have the ability to choose and to flex and to prioritize and to value and to set our schedules, those are opportunities for us, and they reveal in us, who is it that's the boss? Who is it that's the king of my chronos? I know that because I can see who is the king of my kairos. Who's the boss of my time? It's the same as the person who sets the agenda for the boss of my purpose and opportunity, the way that I seize aligning my time with God's purposes. Now, we use our time on some things and we withhold it from some other things. If you don't use your time for some stuff, maybe that's good, maybe that's bad. I'll give you an example. Imagine that you don't use your time to take a shower. And suddenly we're sitting further apart from each other in our seats. What's going to happen if you don't use time to take a shower? You're going to be the stinky kid. They're all going to be talking about you behind your back. If we use our time for things other than our responsibilities, and we prioritize instead stuff that feels fun, then what happens? If I don't use my time to fulfill my responsibilities, but I use my time instead to just, I want to do what feels good, I want to do what feels fun, then I'm going to face consequences sooner or later for spending my time that way. If we don't use time to rest, if we prioritize work or responsibilities or distractions, and we don't rest, then we'll miss out on the refreshing renewal that God offers to you and me. All time belongs to God. All of it. Every moment of every day, of every month, of every year, of our entire lives, and more than that, all time belongs to God. He made the chronos, He made kairos, and He made us. Every moment of every day belongs to Him, but we don't always act that way, do we? I mean, we could say it all belongs to God. He's the one who made time, but it belongs to you, but like I'm using it right now. It's kind of mine, right? I'm going to do the thing that is it His? If that's the way that I'm treating it? David wrote in Psalm 31, my times are in your hands. What's going to happen with my time, according to this line that David said, was, it's up to you, God. It's in your hands. You choose. You set the agenda. You set the purpose. You establish the beginning and the end of these moments of opportunity that I'm going to have here. My time is in your hands. Can you say that about your schedule? Just reflect for a moment. When you think about the way that you spend your time, is it in alignment with God's kairos, with His moments of opportunity? God tells us the story of Elijah for a number of reasons, and at least one of the reasons why we have this life story of Elijah in the Bible is to show us how God responds to our hard work and our exhaustion. When you are working hard and you're tired because you're caring for a loved one, or because you're at school and you've got assignments and you really need a spring break, or you're going to work and 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 retirement is nowhere on the radar, or maybe you are retired, but you're still spending your time and you have things that you're responsible to do. And when you're doing these things, you need to remember God understands our hard work. He understands our exhaustion. In fact, He planned for it. Elijah needed to sit by a brook. Sometimes we just need to go find that brook and sit down. He needed to take a nap and another nap and his air mattress in the cave overnight. That's 3 naps, by the way. God knew Elijah needed to rest, and He made a way for him to do it. And then next, after that rest, and then the next rest, and then the next rest, after that, when he's there on the mountain for the purpose of meeting with God. Let's look and see what happens in chapter 19, verse 11. So look there with me, 1 Kings 19, starting in verse 11. Go out and stand before me on the mountain, the Lord told him. As Elijah stood there, the Lord passed by, and a mighty windstorm hit the mountain. It was such a terrible blast that the rocks were torn loose. But the Lord was not in the wind. After the wind came an earthquake. I don't know if you've ever been in an earthquake before. It's terrifying. The ground's shaking, stuff's crashing. But the Lord was not in the earthquake. And after the earthquake, there was a fire. Flames, heat, fear. But the Lord was not in the fire. All this power, a terrible blasting windstorm, an earthquake that shakes the ground, all this energetic activity and flame. And our lives can get kind of like that sometimes. Action and energy and busyness and stress and worry. But that is not where Elijah met the Lord. Partway through verse 12, it says, after the fire, there was a sound of a gentle whisper. And when Elijah heard it, he wrapped his face in his cloak, and he went out, and he stood at the entrance of the cave. Elijah recognized God's presence. He humbly covered his face, and he came to meet with God. That's the whole reason he went to the mountain. He'd been sent to this mountain to meet with God. And then God's like, come on out and meet with me. Well, but chaos, energy, excitement, distraction, fire, ground shaking, storms. That's not where he met God. There would have been no way for Elijah to hear that gentle whisper if he hadn't quieted down, right? And sometimes quieting ourselves means a whole lot more than just turning down the radio so that we don't miss the street we're trying to turn onto. Sometimes quieting ourselves has a lot more to do with than just our ears or the actual decibels that are in the room, because there's a whole lot of noise that's going on in our brains and in our hearts and swirling around on the inside. And if he had never quieted himself and rested, I don't believe he ever could have heard that quiet whisper, that still, small voice from God. Rest is a gift from God, and we cannot go on without it. Modern science proves what God already knew, that rest is a part of how we work and spend our time. It improves our health, it improves our focus and our longevity. There is a kairos, a purpose for our chronos, the way that we spend our time. So rest. If you can learn to do this, your trust in God's provision will grow. If you can learn to do this, your work will become more productive. I'm going to guess that might make your boss happier with you. If you can learn to do this, your stress will be reduced, and the rhythm of your life will follow the pattern of work and Sabbath rest, just as God designed. Rest. It's a gift from God. Pray with me. God, I know this is a harder concept for some of us more than it is for others. And for some of us, it's okay. We got this. It's all right. But there are others of us that really struggle when it comes to just taking a day off. The list of responsibilities never ends. The list of things that need to get done doesn't ever come to a conclusion. This message is for us. So in the midst of our hard work, God, whether it's related to job or school, in the midst of our hard work, whether it's related to something personal, a relationship, a loved one, our finance, our struggle, our stress. In the midst of all these raging fires and things that shake the earth beneath our lives, these mighty storms that come crashing in. Oh God, help us to quiet ourselves so that we could find you in the gentle whisper. Help us, Lord, to trust in you, to care for us enough, to trust in you to know what we need, to trust in you to be our providers so that we can rest. Help us to make the time to rest. You commanded us to do it, and we can see that there's value in it. So in response to Jesus' invitation to come to him when we are weary and heavy burdened, we come to you for rest. We come to you like sheep without a shepherd who have been running from wolves, on the hunt for provision, on the hunt for safety, on the hunt for answers. Be the shepherd that leads us into a quiet pasture and makes us lay down. Be the one who restores our souls. In the name of Jesus, give us this rest, this gift from you, oh God. Amen.